Tecovas is the go-to for premium, handcrafted Western boots. Stop by any store location for a warm welcome, a cold drink in hand, and a truly one-of-a-kind shopping experience. Let our friendly staff help you find your new go-to boots, whether your first pair or your 50th. Finish things off with a complimentary boot brand to make them extra special. Come for the boots, stay for the good times. Tecovas, forever West.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Breaking news.
And tonight on the Rita Cosby Show, stunning developments over the weekend at the White House Correspondents Dinner, a dinner I've been to many, many times. I know that hotel inside and out. I have been there so many times. And when I think about what happened this weekend, I think security was so lax. I think there were so many problems. The guy went down 10 flights of stairs. He brought in weapons across the country. Apparently, we're hearing now that some volunteer walked in on him, creating the gun, putting the gun together. There are so many questions tonight. And what if this was a more orchestrated or a more sophisticated attacker? What if it was a group of Iranian terrorists? Think about in Mumbai. There were, I think it was about 9 or 10 terrorists that came into the Taj Mahal Hotel. And they took over the hotel for days. They killed over 170 people. They injured 300 people. And that's why I say what happened over the weekend at the Hilton Hotel, called the Hinckley Hilton, because that is where Ronald Reagan had the assassination attempt against him in 1981. And that's why the president goes underneath. I've gone through that entrance where everything happened with Reagan and Hinckley many times. And it's now changed, obviously, since 1981. I didn't start going there till quite a bit later. But I know exactly that entranceway. I know the doors. I know the red carpet. I know exactly the stairs where the attacker was. And I know where the magnetometer was because it's been in the same place for so many years. And to me, this was a catastrophe in so many ways, but they got lucky because the guy didn't have a suicide vest. He didn't have a grenade. He wasn't a sophisticated attacker. Obviously, he planned and he plotted. I don't think he's going to be able to use the insanity defense in any way, shape, or form. That is a zero chance, guys, because he planned methodically. We're hearing today from our buddy Judge Jeanine Pirro that he booked the hotel on April 6th. The event was April 25th. And then he takes the train from California to Chicago and then Chicago to Washington, D.C., loaded for bear. This was plotting. This was methodical. This wasn't some whim, spontaneous issue. So he's going to have a hard time. He's got the manifesto that he apparently sent to his sister and brother, where he said he wanted to take down Trump administration officials from the top down. And that's why he got charged today with the attempted assassination against the president of the United States. And that's why this guy put him in a jail where he is right now and throw away the key. This guy will never see the light of day. Welcome to the Rita Cosby Show. You can tell that I am venting tonight because I know that place well. And I am outraged that the president of the United States, someone I've known for decades, that this man has to be so concerned for a crazy person who I believe became radicalized like many other smart, because this guy's smart. If you look at his background, he had a whole bunch of degrees. He had a whole bunch of very prestigious internships, radicalized online and with some of these groups. And I think those who are spewing this hateful, horrible rhetoric that we hear from so many Democrats, especially across this country, I think they bear responsibility. They have incited a cauldron, and sadly, there are a lot more Cole Allens out there, and that's what concerns me tonight. They got lucky that they were able to stop this guy, that he was running. There are reports that maybe he tripped and fell, and luckily, he was stopped. But what if he had an explosive on him, even though he was the floor above the president of the United States, the ballroom that had him and so many people in the cabinet all in one location? Talk about succession. All these different individuals were there. You got the vice president, you had Speaker Mike Johnson, you had all these people in one room, and you had more than 2,000 plus journalists in there too as well. And that guy, according to his manifesto, said he would not stop taking out essentially anybody that was in his way to get to these individuals. So that is darn right frightening. This could have been a mass casualty event. And luckily, the guy saw the magnetometers, so that was good. And the Secret Service guys tackled him, or he fell and then they tackled him. Either way, they were able to stop him, and that is the great news. But the sad thing is, this president still has quite a bit of time in office, and he is definitely receiving the most threats of any president I have seen in my lifetime. And we have to do something to protect the president of our country and his family, and also all those members of the cabinet. And what I saw over the weekend was a woeful, sad display. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. And you are listening to The Rita Cosby Show. You could tell I am fired up tonight. I know that place, I know that event, and I know all the players that were there. This was a disgrace that people could just show their ticket. It could have been a Xerox ticket. I can't tell you how many times that I've been there posing on the red carpet, and then suddenly Bob from Tuscaloosa shows up, and he's got, he's sitting there going, "Hi, Rita, how you doing?" I'm like, you don't look like one of the guests. He's wearing a T-shirt, just like so-and-so from somewhere else popping in. And guess what? They're guests who are at the hotel. And from what I heard, too, this time, I wasn't there this time. I had many friends inside. But this time, there were people that were like showing up protesting, not only just guests that were at the hotel. There were protesters out there talking about long live Palestine on the red carpet. And if you notice, any of you guys, when you're watching the video, you see Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, walking by. You see RFK Jr. You see also Pete Hegseth. You see all these people walking by the red carpet. What if the Palestinian protester saw it as an opportunity? How do you know they're just a Palestinian protester? Some of them are downright destructive in some of the things they say. And who do you know if maybe they're not just protesting peacefully? Maybe they have something on them. I mean, that's why this is so dangerous and so catastrophic. And again, I say we got lucky, but this cannot happen again. Other big story tonight. We just found out a few minutes ago that Oz Perlman, who is the mentalist. I know Oz. I actually went to one of his shows. He's very talented. He was the guy who was talking to President Trump and the First Lady and Caroline Leavitt doing the trick when the whole thing happened and suddenly the gunshots rang out. Well, he was supposed to be on Jimmy Kimmel tonight, and it just came out a few minutes ago that he is not going to be on Jimmy Kimmel. He canceled it because he said, "I don't want to be a part of this guy's show." President Trump also saying that Jimmy Kimmel should be fired, and Melania Trump saying it is time for a reckoning. We're going to play those comments specifically of what Jimmy Kimmel said just 2 days before the attempted assassination. Those words are really, truly reprehensible. He hit a new low, I thought, by the comments he made about Charlie Kirk, and now he went even lower, making these comments about the president of the United States. And all it takes is some loony kazoonie, like this guy, Cole Allen. If you look at him, he looks like a loony kazoonie. Smart guy. He clearly is calculating. This is a guy who could have done a lot of positive things with his life. He sounds like he's got a smart brain, but he has a warped brain, and now he will spend the rest of his life behind bars. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. And here is President Trump, because President Trump was asked, this was not too long after the attempted assassination. He's back at the White House, and he was asked, why do you think you in particular are the target of so many of these attempted assassinations, of this violence? Why are they after you? And this is what he calmly said. Take a listen.
The people across the globe, in fact, are watching you. You demonstrated courageous leadership, and thank God you're alive. All of us are alive today. What is the message that you want to give to the world that this should change? What corrective measures can we take from here on? So.
Well, all you can do, look, I don't care how many people you have, how good they are, They can be the greatest people. You have the greatest security in history. If you have a whack job who's got a brain, but it's a little bit distorted or a lot distorted, they can make trouble. I would say, Pete, right? You know, they can make trouble. Some of these people are of genius level IQ, and they're nuts. So it can be trouble. So you do absolutely the best. You get the best. We have the best people. Well, look, it was proven tonight. He started running from 50 yards, and he was fast. He was like a blur on tape. He was moving. It was very impressive the way they got him, because a lot of people would be looking and saying, you know, it's like a weird feeling, and they would let him get through, but they didn't let him get through. They drew those guns so fast. They looked like Matt Dillon. They looked like somebody that knew what they were doing. What do we do? But it comes with the territory. And if you want to do a great job, I really believe that. And you take a look at what's happened to some of our greatest presidents, and it doesn't happen to people that don't do anything. And it's not going to deter me from winning the war in Iran. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. I really don't think so, based on what we know. But we're going to continue to do a great job. That's all I can do.
And his White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, today said the rhetoric coming from Democrats who certainly know better are churning the fans of fire, that they are definitely creating these heated, horrible moments, and they're inciting people. Somebody who's a little off their rocker says, oh, so-and-so said that, so-and-so said that. Well, it must be true. And here she is today, putting squarely the blame at some of this vile rhetoric that all of us have heard, and that it seems like the Democrats have normalized violence and violent rhetoric. Here's Caroline Leavitt.
This political violence stems from a systemic demonization of him and his supporters by commentators, yes, by elected members of the Democrat Party, and even some in the media. This hateful and constant and violent rhetoric directed at President Trump day after day after day for 11 years has helped to legitimize this violence and bring us to this dark moment. Those who constantly falsely label and slander the president as a fascist, as a threat to democracy, and compare him to Hitler to score political points are fueling this kind of violence. The left-wing cult of hatred against the president and all of those who support him and work for him has gotten multiple people hurt and killed, and it almost did so again this weekend.
That is a powerful line, the left-wing cult of hatred. And the comments keep on coming. I mean, even after this, a number of them were asked, hey, you know, what about your rhetoric? Oh, not our rhetoric. All you have to do is play back their comments. It's 2026. It's all on tape. It's pretty easy. And speaking of vile and horrible comments from the guy who I don't think is funny at all, ABC's Jimmy Kimmel. Remember, he was suspended not that long ago after the comments that he made about Charlie Kirk, after he was assassinated. And this is what he had to say 2 days before the attempted assassination. And this is what he said about President Trump and First Lady Melania. Listen to this.
Our First Lady Melania is here. Look at Melania, so beautiful. Mrs. Trump, you have a glow like an expectant widow.
Wow, that is shocking. A glow like an expectant widow. Wishing the death. What else does that mean? Obviously, she's not there. He's showing an image of her, pretending like she's there, smiling and happy that President Trump would be killed. All you have to do is have somebody who's a little askew who listens to something like that and says, oh, Jimmy Kimmel says it. It must be true. Or he means it. How is that funny? What has happened to comedy in America, and what has happened to Democrats in America? Because it used to be at a time, maybe during my first White House Correspondents Dinner, where people used to talk to each other. Maybe they didn't get along or they philosophically didn't agree, but they were civil. I don't remember ever anybody using the phrase Hitler or this or that against a political foe. But for some reason, they think it's okay against President Trump. We're going to take your calls when we come back. 1-800-848-9222. And you are listening to The Rita Cosby Show.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Security program on spreadsheets, new regulations piling up, and audit dread? It's time for Vanta. Vanta automates security and compliance, brings evidence into one place, and cuts audit prep by 82%. Less manual work, clearer visibility, faster deals. Zero chaos. Call it compliance or call it compliance. Get it? Join the 15,000 companies using Vanta to prove trust. Go to vanta.com/calm.
It's the Rita Cosby Show.
And I am so heated up about the security at the White House Correspondents Dinner. Tony was trying to see if I knew that song. I know it, Tony. And also, mentalist Oz Perlman clearly shows some spine. I love this. He was scheduled to appear on Jimmy Kimmel Live tonight, but he said after what happened at the White House Correspondents' Dinner and the comments that Jimmy Kimmel made about Melania Trump, the First Lady and the President, 2 days before this assassination attempt, he said, I no longer want to appear, and I hope a lot of other people do the same. Of course, President Trump and Melania both calling for Jimmy Kimmel to be fired. Here again, I want to play this. This is again what Jimmy Kimmel said 2 days before what happened at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And this is not a funny joke. This is a nasty joke. Here it is.
Our First Lady Melania is here. Look at Melania. So beautiful. Mrs. Trump, you have a glow like an expectant widow.
First of all, the joke is horrible, and who's laughing? Sadly, some people, I guess, do think it's funny. I think it's reprehensible, and clearly the president does too. And then this isn't the first time with Jimmy Kimmel. Let's remember what he said right after Charlie Kirk's assassination. This caused him to be suspended for a few days. Here's what he said right after that.
He had some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points.
I mean, and of course, it turned out that it certainly wasn't one of them. And everybody knew it wasn't one of them, MAGA. They knew that it was somebody else. But for some reason, again, trying to switch the narrative, trying to change the narrative. And that is sort of par for the course with Jimmy Kimmel and a number of others, and including 60 Minutes. We'll play this later on. You had Nora O'Donnell there saying, pedophile, this, that. What do you think, Mr. President? And he was like, I think your comment is horrible. So we're going to get into that as well. And also, what do you think went horribly wrong at the White House Correspondents' Dinner? And what can we do to protect our president? There's discussions today that he may wear a bulletproof vest for all future outside events or big public events. Have we come to that?
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Rita Cosby is on. The Rita Cosby Show presents Back the Blue.
And this Back the Blue segment coming from Culpeper, Virginia, where Officer Kenny Arquetta was on just a routine patrol when he heard a faint cry for help. And he said as the calls for help drew his attention toward a local home and they drew stronger, He arrived there and he located a woman who was in her 70s, and it was clear she was in a lot of pain as she had fallen down steps just outside of her home. The officer immediately called emergency services, and she was taken to a nearby hospital for treatment. Thankfully, she is expected to make a full recovery. The Culpeper Police Department reminding everybody of the importance of checking in on older adults. And as for the officer, he said it was right place, right time. It's relieving that she was able to get the comfort of actually getting the help that she needed. And thank goodness I was there. Bravo to him. And of course, all of our great men and women in blue. And also bravo to law enforcement at the White House Correspondents Dinner. I posted on my Twitter at Rita Cosby the video where you see the guy jump in front of the president, literally putting his body in front of the president of the United States. That's amazing. Now, I covered White House for many years, and I'm telling you, those Secret Service guys are guts of steel. And I really do applaud them for following and chasing after the guy after he ran through the barricade. And then those inside that were closest to the president, taking him down, taking J.D. Vance, the vice president, down, bringing them out, rushing out, of course, all of the different secretaries. And then you see that guy jumping onto the stage and literally standing. He's a big, tall guy dressed up. And you could tell that he was sort of in the audience, acting like he was just another guest. And then suddenly you see dozens of Secret Service agents and others go in to protect the president and others in that room. But primarily, of course, the target is the president. And this one guy literally stands up and stands in front of him, ready to take a bullet for the president. Remember, at that moment, they didn't know what was going to happen. They didn't know if the guy or there was somebody else even inside the room that maybe he was working in cahoots with. You don't know. Did he have maybe an explosive device on him? Was there a timer in the room? You don't know. There are so many things. And there could have been many associates, maybe others that were in the room working with that guy, ready to do something. And that guy stood in front of the president of the United States. And that's why every day we got to thank our men and women in blue, and especially those of the Secret Service, because, boy, they definitely jumped into action. The question is, why did the guy get that close? I think they shouldn't do events with the president. I hate to say it, at hotels. I've always loved going through that hotel. I've gone through that magnetometer. I've never rushed it. I've gone through that magnetometer. But I've always wondered why we saw hotel guests kind of mingling with everybody else, especially considering, you know, there are a lot of VIPs. There's often members of the Supreme Court. I remember one dinner I was at, Justice Scalia was there. And I remember also seeing Clarence Thomas. And, you know, you see people like that. There are a lot of who's who there. So why would anybody who might have a grievance against anybody be able to get access? They could have easily gotten into one of those parties and opened fire too. And that could have been incredibly like a bloodbath, as it could have been had they gotten into the ballroom. Absolutely frightening. So the good news is it was stopped. But the bad news is there will be other attempts. I'm sad to say it. And we have to figure out how to make sure it does not happen again. Here is President Trump. He's on 60 Minutes. And during this interview on 60 Minutes, they talked about first that this guy went to a No Kings rally. And some of the rhetoric, he said, is pretty indicative of those who go to some of these No Kings rally. Apparently, the sister of the guy said he went to one in California. And here is the president talking with Norah O'Donnell about that.
The other thing in the manifesto that I think is worth looking at in terms of determining his motive is he had been staying at the hotel since Friday. He checked in, he said he had cased the place, and he wrote, "What the hell is the Secret Service doing?" And he wrote this quote, "I expected security cameras at every bend, bugged hotel rooms, armed agents every 10 feet, metal detectors out the wazoo. What I got is nothing." He wrote, like, this level of incompetence is insane. Sir, you have already had two attempted...
Well, he was pretty incompetent, too, because he got caught. And he got caught pretty easily. So I'd say he was pretty incompetent, too. You know, I could take any event having to do with security or anything else. I can always find fault. Those guys did a good job last night. They did a really good job.
I mention that because, again, as his motive, and you brought this up, he had social media accounts that had anti-Trump and anti-Christian rhetoric.
You should read. Why don't you read all the anti-Trump? Why don't you read it? You just did, so why don't you read it?
Well, he had a lot of anti-Christian rhetoric. He was part of a group called the Wide Awakes. He had attended a No Kings protest in California.
No Kings. Yeah.
What did security tell you about what may have been his motives?
The reason you have people like that is you have people doing no kings. I'm not a king. What I am, if I was a king, I wouldn't be dealing with you.
That was a great answer by President Trump, throwing it right back there. And then, of course, it gets to this question. She says, here's what also was in the manifesto, and starts reading him the pedophile claims, all this other stuff. And Trump throws it again right back at Norah O'Donnell of CBS. Here it is.
So-called manifesto is a stunning thing to read, Mr. President. He appears to reference a motive in it. He writes this, quote, administration officials, they are targets. And he also wrote this: I am no longer willing to permit a pedophile, rapist, and traitor to coat my hands with his crimes. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I was waiting for you to read that because I knew you would, because you're horrible people, horrible people. Yeah, he did write that. I'm not a rapist. I didn't rape anybody.
Do you think he was referring to you?
Excuse me. I'm not a pedophile. You read that crap from some sick person. I got associated with all stuff that has nothing to do with me. I was totally exonerated. Your friends on the other side of the plate are the ones that were involved with, let's say, Epstein or other things. But I said to myself, I'll do this interview and they'll probably, I read the manifesto, he's a sick person, but you should be ashamed of yourself reading that because I'm not any of those things.
Mr. President,
and I
these
was
are
never,
the gunman's words.
Excuse me. You shouldn't be reading that on 60 Minutes. You're a disgrace. But go ahead. Let's finish the interview.
The other thing that he wrote in the other thing in the manifesto.
And I'd say it went downhill from there. And the sad thing is, that wasn't the only sort of sign of media bias. You got to hear, this is Congressman Andy Ogles. He's a Republican from Tennessee. And this is what he said at the White House Correspondents Dinner, that he heard another member of the media making some really nasty comments while she was hiding from the shooter. Listen to this one.
There was a reporter. I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it. There was a reporter in the room who was under a table. And when the shots went off and everybody's hiding, she said, I hope they killed the orange MF. That was a journalist in the room who was hoping that when she stood up, the President of the United States would be dead. So I'm coming to a public venue where I know it might be hostile to expose myself to an honest dialogue, an open dialogue. And if you ask me a question and I don't have an answer, I will get you something in writing or we can talk on the phone. But when you have members of the press openly enticing, hoping, talking about killing the chief executive officer of this country, again, Muslim, Jew, Hindu, I don't care. That's a problem.
I'm sorry, what did she say?
I hope they killed the orange MF.
Wow. That is shocking. At the moment, think about that. You're hiding under the table. Everyone's fearful of what's going to happen. And she's saying, I hope they kill the orange MF. That is reprehensible. And whoever said that shouldn't be a journalist. They're not a journalist. They're a vile, disgusting human being. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Al in Yonkers. Al, first, just before we get to what you want to say, what did you think? My jaw is dropping about this Congressman Andy Ogles comment, what he says he heard while they were hiding under the table.
Yeah, I would have to believe it's factual because he is, a congressperson to make those claims.
Yeah. So what do you make? What do you make of a reporter saying that if it's true?
It's hard to believe, but if it is true, it's reprehensible. It's a disgrace. But again, I'd have to believe it's true if he said it. But again, it would be reprehensible.
You know what? You know, the sad thing is, Al, to me, it's shocking given the timing.
Yes.
But the fact that somebody would say that, sadly, to me, isn't that shocking. Because if you look at a lot of the coverage, that's sort of how they feel. And obviously, maybe they didn't realize that he was a congressman. Maybe didn't realize in the heat of the moment, just spoke extemporaneously. But if you look at a lot of the coverage, a lot of them sort of display that every single day. They gave Biden a pass. They coddled Obama. And now this one, they vilify every 5 seconds. You know, I mean, to me, there's only a handful, I think, that are really, quote, fair journalists.
Yeah, I agree. It just must have been a state of pandemonium. You had a would-be assassin. You could see by the First Lady's expression, even in the New York Post, that the would-be shooter got way too close to the dais, and she spotted him, I believe, before the president, and she was very concerned with her look.
Oh, yeah, and also you could tell she realized suddenly, by the way, I was watching live. I've been in the room many times, and I've never seen that happen. But for suddenly them to get up, and then when the submachines guys came up with the submachine guns and they got on the dais, I was like, oh, whoa. That's when I thought, oh boy, who else is in the room? Because at first, when everything was coming, because of course that's what they're thinking is there's somebody outside. They probably already knew that. They know what the sound of gunshots are. And then they're thinking, is there an accomplice in the room? Like, is there something else about to happen in the room? That's when I thought, oh, my goodness, this is shocking. Right. You know,
it really is.
It was. So where do we go from here? And how do you think this guy, we know the details, but what went so horribly wrong that he got so close to the room with all those people?
Yeah, what I believe went terribly wrong is whether you're a Secret Service agent, if you're at a post, you're a deterrent. What initially went wrong, what I believe, is when he blew by the Secret Service agent, there should have been a couple more there also, a couple division members of the Secret Service. They should have been there. Because the agent was looking down, I believe.
Yeah, and he backed away.
He wasn't really a deterrent.
Right, and he backed away, remember, too?
Yes.
Like he kind of, because all of a sudden, he seemed like he came out of nowhere, like a bat out of hell. Like they didn't, like he was probably looking, peeking, realized, okay, the president's arrived, now's my time to get in there. And he probably, like, according to his own manifesto, said he saw this very loose security. So he saw all that and maybe was surprised when he saw the magnetometer, went, oh, wow, everything else looks loose. He didn't get to maybe that section yet. And at least like the magnetometer set up and all that other stuff. So he probably didn't expect it and thought, okay, now I got to get past them. So he probably was around the corner and then ran like a bat out of hell. And went and obviously took him, like you said, by surprise. But I've heard different Secret Service guys talking about how the Secret Service guy, because like you said, he's looking down, because this was after the guests come in. Almost everybody, just to get a sense, everybody kind of comes in usually around the same time. Usually there's thousands of people, but hundreds, at any given minute that are just kind of going through these different magnetometers. And so maybe they thought, okay, well, barely any guests are coming through now. Maybe there's a couple late stragglers, but most of them, by the time the president comes, they come. So it obviously surprised them that anybody was coming at that time. But you're right. They should have been looking around because it seemed like the guy, came out of nowhere and nobody saw him coming. And had that agent saw him, he probably would have blocked him or opened fire on him at that point. But then we might not, who knows, what might have happened to the agent.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you. But he definitely should have been more focused. The security detail who ran that for the Secret Service that night, he should have had a couple of other agents posted there. Again, I'm not going to be a Monday morning quarterback because breaches have happened many times. We've seen that through the decades. But they definitely will do a thorough review, and I'm sure the president will make sure, because it's him and his immediate family who we got to make sure stays protected and safe.
Yeah, there is no doubt about it. I agree. They have to do a full review. And maybe he needs to wear a bulletproof vest, but I don't think, I actually don't think he should maybe do events at hotels, because you can't check. There were 1,100 rooms in this hotel, and you can't check every room unless you close down the rest of the hotel. You do a suite. You can't, right? Unless the hotel is agreeing to, for the 24 hours, to just only have it be, that event downstairs. But if you open it up, the minute you open it up to hotel guests, you got a problem. You don't know who's going to come in. And by the way, you don't know if, like, a cleaning guy, somebody dressed up like a cleaning guy comes in. It might not even be the hotel guest who's checking in that's a threat. I mean, these days the threats are so high. And you think about, we're in the middle of war. You know that the Iranians, somebody there would like to take a pot shot at them, and they're pretty sophisticated. So that's what's so scary, Al, these sleeper cells in this country. That's why we are so darn lucky that it wasn't a sophisticated attack in this one. Al, thank you very, very much. And we'll see. I agree. I think there's going to be major changes for the president and for others. And we got to keep him safe. And that's something we should all care about. We're going to continue your calls, everybody, after the break. 1-800-848-9222. And you're listening to The Rita Cosby Show.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Fox News is now streaming live on Fox One. When news breaks, we don't just report it. We go beyond the headlines to get the full story. Get live coverage, in-depth analysis, and perspectives from the voices you trust, all in one place. Whether you're at home or on the go, stay connected to the stories shaping our world. Stream Fox News on Fox One. Download today.
This is The Rita Cosby Show.
And this just in about the shooter, Cole Allen. Get this, his father was a church leader. Wow. So that might explain, in early writings, he was very positive about Christ and his faith. And then apparently in the manifesto, he was criticizing Christianity. So maybe there's something else more to that story. But apparently his father, Thomas Allen, has been a leader at their local church, Grace United Reformed Church, according to public records. The church not commenting to the media, but that is a very interesting detail about his life. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Gail in Pennsylvania on line 2. Go ahead, Gail, your thoughts tonight.
Hi, Rita. I think that Susie Wiles has a lot of good qualities, but I don't think she should be the overseer of the Secret Service. I think that it really needs somebody with some law enforcement background, and it seems to me that Susie Wiles has a lot of skills, but not in that area. And it was my understanding that she nixed some reforms to the Secret Service, I had heard. And after a number of close calls, I think it would be better to replace her in that role.
Well, she apparently is talking to the Secret Service about some necessary changes, but that's sort of more related to the security. I mean, typically, there are other people that would oversee Secret Service than her. But what's interesting is that she does know the president well. I mean, the one thing that's interesting, Gail, is she can talk about how the president handles himself, how he can still live his life and still be out there talking to people because he loves people and loves getting out there on the campaign trail. And she can maybe help with sort of insight as to, okay, this is what he typically does. This is what he likes to do. He likes to, go and shake some hands. What can you do there? What do I need to tell him? The only thing that's the reason I think she needs to be at least part of the discussion is the president definitely does listen to her and he trusts her. And she's been very, very successful. And a lot of people feel sometimes she's one of the only people in the room who'll say, Mr. President, that's not right, or you need to look at this, or you need to do that. sometimes a lot of people in that position clearly don't have a lot of people that will tell them what they shouldn't do. And she's one of the few who does. And he seems to appreciate that and appreciate her confidence. So maybe her being the balancing act is a good thing if she's just the translator. But you're right. You need somebody with a lot of security experience right there at the helm. We're going to talk more in the next hour, guys.
Thanks for listening to The Rita Cosby Show. You can hear The Rita Cosby Show weeknights at 10 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?